YouTube. What is up, guys? I miss you guys so much all the time. Alicia all back here with another video. And this one was highly requested. You probably found it because you've been going through the 30-day DevOps challenge that we have hosted, primarily using AWS services to take sports API from the NBA or soccer and create some really cool projects with, data, streaming, media, containers, you name it. And we thought like the whole intent of the Cozy Cloud crew is to provide a cloud agnostic experience. So let's do it in Azure, right? For those of you who have been following along in real time, it's January 30th. So that means next week we are dropping our first Azure project. And at the end of all of these projects for Azure, we have 50 certifications to give away. Now, I've been an underdog my entire life, so I don't want to do it based on the best 50 projects per se. I'm still ironing out the kinks on how to give them out, but I just want to make sure that it's people who's really going to appreciate it and get certified at the end of March with us. But anyways, I wanted to start making some proactive videos to get you guys engaged into Azure and really understanding that world if you haven't had much exposure to it. And so I want to go through the certifications that they actually offer at Azure or at Microsoft for the cloud. And I'm also going to give you guys a cheat sheet on how you can pretty much take the resources that you were using in AWS and bring them to Azure, right? So apple to apple comparison with the two services. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into the machine and get to it. All right, y'all. So first and foremost, the most important piece of this is going to be how can you continue to get access to this information for free. So Azure actually has a $200 credit to use on services, and really like there's a lot of free tier services that like you'll be using for a lot of these projects that you'll be able to use even after you consume or run through that. It does require you to put a card on file initially when you get started, but like I said, with properly deleting your resources and running off the free tier, you can ensure that you don't really run through that credit relatively fast. All right, so jumping into the certifications themselves, I wanted to show you this view of the certifications to understand like the different levels or how they're numbered, right? So at the bottom here, your fundamentals levels are going to be like your basic or beginner friendly certification. So similar to AWS, how you have the cloud practitioner exam as like your intro into the cloud. Your AZ 900 exam is just going to be an Azure fundamentals that talks about all of the different services. Well, not all of them, but some of the core services in Azure at a fundamental pace. So the higher the number, as you notice, kind of like the lower the difficulty level is for the exam. So then when you move up into the associate realm, right, you have some 100, 300, and 500 levels. Now, I have a different view that explains these expert levels, but essentially to achieve these badges or some of these solutions, you would take a combination of exams to get there. And I'll show you all that on a different path. But one thing that I did want to note is like if you're just starting off in the cloud and you kind of want to just get a feel for like what all the services are and remembering them, AZ 900 is going to be a great place to start. Or of course, if you're interested in AI or data, the DP 900 or the AI 900 are going to be great choices. I actually have both these certifications, so I might drop a video on how I study for both, just in case those of you who are interested in studying for either decide to pursue those. But another important thing to note as a difference before I move on between AWS and Azure when it comes to their exams is like AWS to me like was primarily multiple choice exams for the most part. And Azure does a combination depending on the exam that you're taking. I've seen multiple choice, I've seen fill in the blank, drag and drops, case studies. And I think for someone like me, it just allows me to really like confirm that I am learning the information, but also even more importantly, it allows me to like strategically think out of the box. Sometimes when I'm just going through a bunch of multiple choice questions, it gets redundant for my brain. So keeps me on my toes for sure. But yeah, another thing to note also is that some of these exams do renew yearly, but you can take some of them online and renew those for free. So just want to point out some differences from what you might be used to. But I actually like to use this view for the certifications instead of the previous one, because this one does a great job of mapping the actual paths a person can take depending on interest. And so that would be my piece of advice to you, is like, think about, now that you've been exposed to, a decent amount of projects on the AWS side, and you'll be exposed to a decent amount of projects using services on the Azure side, start to think about like, what was the most exciting or interesting piece of it, right? Like, were you really interested in the data component when we were working with like glue crawler, and soon to be some of like doing some SQL stuff on the Azure side? Was that part interesting to you? Are you interested in AI because it's up and coming in like a really booming market in the cloud? We had a networking component where we work with VPCs, which is going to be VNets here over on the Azure side of things. But was that part like intriguing and you really want to understand networking? Honestly, the goal as someone who's interested in cloud and DevOps is to get a holistic view of all these topics. But Rome wasn't built in one day. You're going to take this one step at a time. So after you figure out like what career track you're kind of interested in, like, I want to be a cloud engineer, like an actual Azure developer, I want to get into data, whatever the case may be, then you can decide how you attack your studying. Now, as you can see, the first step for all of them is going to be typically a fundamentals exam. It's listed as optional, like you don't have to take that exam to qualify for that badge, but it's just showing like, if you want to start from the ground up and build up your knowledge, this is step one, right? AZ 900, the just basic fundamentals about Azure, AI 900, basic fundamentals about AI, or the DP 900, basic fundamentals about the data portfolio itself. Now, let's say you were interested in becoming like a DevOps engineer, right? I actually have this badge or this certification. Then in order to do that, you would take a combination of these exams to get there, right? So you could either do the AZ 204 or the AZ 104 and combine that with the AZ 400, and you would get this kind of DevOps badge to it. So, I mean, obviously, as someone who's building out services, you want to understand how to administer them and give the proper policies to the right person. I was a solutions architect when I was going after this specific certification. So I dived into the AZ 204, developing solutions for Microsoft Azure. And this will be a really cool course. It'll be pretty similar to what we're doing here, right? We're using different components to build out a full solution, or we're using different services to build out a full solution. So it's pretty much understanding like what a customer's requirements are, and then what would be the best solution for that. So it could be a question like, your customer is interested in storing data that isn't like consistently formatted, right? And maybe Cosmos DB might be the best kind of solution or the best service to use with those other things within the ecosystem. So pretty cool way to test your knowledge, especially after you do the AZ 900, and you can move right into actually coupling things together to build them out. But as you can see here, security is also a big component for those of you who are interested in like cybersecurity or security as a whole. I just think like having this one under your belt also is a good route to take, just simply because like the posture of making sure that you understand how to really lock things down and you're not coding things with vulnerabilities, hard-coded endpoints. We showed you guys that during the project, right? Like, we wanted to start off making it easy for you to call variables and understand, but then we showed you guys how to put that in like a .env or an environment file, or adding that into like, your git ignore to make sure that you're not hard coding those things, and kind of checking those into the repo, right? But data engineer, this is also another one that I might go after. I do have the DP 900 as well. It was a really great way for me to just understand the entire data portfolio within Azure itself. So DP 202 should probably be next up for me, but I think I want to take something at the 900 level with you guys, so that way we could all follow along together. But I won't be super redundant with kind of going through these, but yeah, my recommendation to you would be, okay, what niche do I want to start to somewhat specialize in? And, cater your learning path towards that. Database is another like lane within itself. Of course, you have data engineering, data science, and then just overall architecture, and then DevOps. Like if you are interested in automating CI/CD pipelines, best practices around that, like I said, that is a great place for you to live and breathe. But yeah, let me know. Comment which certification you'll be taking if you win one of the free certifications, or just in general, even if you're watching this later, comment what path is interested in you. I'm kind of curious kind of what niche you all levitate towards. Like I said, I am obviously biased towards DevOps and data, but that's just where, I kind of find the most fulfillment. I will link this down in the description below for you all. This is a really great cheat sheet or resource that shows you the different names for the services. Like the easiest way to transition into another cloud is to start to understand like what you know versus what you don't. And so like one of the things we've worked with in our project has been S3 as an example, right? And so you could come down to the storage section and you could start to look for S3, and then it would kind of show you some of the comparable names like blob storage for S3. We talked about VPCs and VNets earlier. So yes, like as you can see here, a VPC, virtual private cloud, VPC peering would be a virtual network peering in Azure. So you think about the things we've worked with in our previous projects, come here and swap them out and find them in Azure. I'll also link some YouTube videos below that kind of go over like a comparison of the clouds or what they do. There are some fundamental things that remain the same. Like we'll have the ability to create resources in the portal. We'll have the ability to create resources within the CLI itself. On the Azure side, we call them ARM templates or Azure Resource Manager templates. All right, y'all. And so I hope you guys got some value recapping the different certifications and the different services. Like I was saying, the goal is to really think about what services you were using in AWS and how will those map over to Azure for those of you who are coming from an AWS background. The way I like to think about it is like learning a new language almost. It won't be as difficult as that at all, but like once you already know English, you just start to map like what are the equivalent words in Spanish or in French and kind of memorize those. Now, luckily for you, you won't be having to remember like thousands of words. It'll just be like remembering one service and then starting to learn some of the differences, like how does it work? What does it require? I mean, there are some things that will introduce like resource groups and subscriptions, but guys, don't worry. Like you're in good hands with me. I'm going to connect all the dots and make it make sense and ensure that like you can add another cloud onto your belt. Super important in my opinion to stay cloud agnostic, really between the top 3 cloud providers. I would say collectively Azure and AWS make up maybe like 50% of the market. Like they're relatively close. I think like AWS might be at like 31% and Azure might have been at like 25% last year. I have to pull up a report and confirm those statistics. But yeah, man, like this video, subscribe, drop in the comments what certification you're going to be going afterwards. And yeah, starting next week, we'll be dropping some Azure products and adding another cloud to your belt. So I will see you guys in the next video.